Welcome, everybody. My name is Jeff Rodent, and I'm with Metro Vancouver Regional Parks. So welcome to our Nature Connections webinar series from Campbell Valley Nature House. Thank you for joining us today. I'd just like to say that this webinar series is graciously hosted by Pacific Parklands Foundation. And I'm going to introduce their Executive Director, Janet Antonino, now to say a few words about the foundation. Hi, Janet.
Hello, Jeff. Thank you so much. And first of all, welcome to everyone. As Jeff said, we have a lot of students here today, a lot of people and a lot of students, and I think this is going to be a great treat. I'm very excited. And I was thinking about when I was a student in school, and we used to sing, "Oh, Canada," and "God Save the Queen." And when my kids started school, things had changed. They still sang, "Oh, Canada," but they didn't sing "God Save the Queen" anymore. And instead, I noticed that they started recognizing the First Nations people who still live here and share this land with us. So I'd like to take just a moment to recognize that. And I would like to recognize and acknowledge that the Campbell Valley Nature House and all of our regional parks are on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish First Nations. And so this is just a moment to pause and to express our appreciation for the opportunity to hold this webinar and to share this time with you on their shared traditional territories. A little bit about the foundation. The Pacific Parklands Foundation was founded 20 years ago to support Metro Vancouver Regional Parks. So we raise funds and we give grants to protect our parks and connect people to nature, just like we're going to do today.
Great, thanks so much, Janet. I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm really excited to welcome Jasmine McCulligh today from the Northern Spotted Owl Breeding Program, and she's going to talk about Northern Spotted Owls. And about halfway through, when she's finished her presentation, we'll do some Q&As, and then she's got a special guest that she's going to bring out, and that's who you see on the screen there. Welcome, Jasmine.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff and Janet. Thank you, Pacific Parklands Foundation and Campbell Valley Metro Van Parks for hosting us today. But yeah, we'll start the presentation here. So we're going to be talking about the spotted owls today and just a little bit about me. So I'm the facility coordinator for the spotted owl breeding program. We're located in Langley. And unfortunately, we've been affected by COVID as well. We haven't been able to do on-site tours, so webinar series like this are really great for us to be able to engage with people and educate people as best we can. We're going to be talking about a variety of different things today, including spotted owl. So we're going to be talking about spotted owl husbandry, what we do here at the breeding program. We're going to be doing a myth busting section, which I would love if everyone participated in. And we're going to, as Jeff mentioned, have a special guest at the end. This is, as well as being hosted by Parkland Foundations, we're also supported by the FWCP Community Engagement Grant, which is helping us put on a series of 5 webinars total. So we did one last Friday, and we'll be doing one every Friday for the next 3 weeks after this week. FWCP is a partnership between BC Hydro, Province of BC, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, First Nations, and public stakeholders. And they funded our internship program as well as community engagement such as this. And they also hosted our Nest cameras in the spring that we do every year. So we're going to be talking again, like I said, about what are owls, specifics about the spotted owl, about our breeding program, and then going into some myths, how you can help the owls, and special guest small eyes, as well as how you can all get involved at the end. So firstly, what are owls? So owls are an order of birds. There are actually 2 families of owls. There's the Sturgidae, which are the true owls, including spotted owls, and the Titanidae, which would be including the barn owls. There are over 200 species, and they're found all across the world except for Antarctica. And they're called raptors, which is a bird of prey, and that means that they use their feet to hunt other animals for food. So they're obligate carnivores, meaning they need meat to survive. They don't eat any vegetables. And they have other unique adaptations that make them excellent hunters, which we will talk a little bit more about later. The spotted owl, as you can see from this photo, is It's a rare owl. It's about 10 or so, less than 10 left in the wild in BC. Here at the breeding program, we have 28. And they're considered endangered because of that, and that's why the breeding program exists. So they're an endangered species according to the Federal Species at Risk Act, as well as the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada. They are a medium-sized owl, so they're about 40 centimeters tall, and their wingspan is about 1 meter. Females weigh about 700 grams, and the males are slightly smaller at 600 grams, so they weigh just over a pound each. So they're quite big, but they don't weigh a lot because they're mostly feathers. And the lifespan of the spot owl is about 10 to 15 years in the wild if they can make it past their first year. But in captivity, we've had individuals live up to 25. In the wild, they'll primarily eat flying squirrels, wood rats, and other rodents. But here at the breeding center, we feed them rats and mice that we breed on site. In the wild, they're found exclusively in old growth forests of BC, which is, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So why is the spot owl endangered? There's a couple different reasons, mainly the habitat loss and fragmentation of these old growth forests that they're dependent on. The old growth forests are a unique 150-year-old forest with different canopy structure, multi-layers, and lots of debris to encourage prey populations, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, due to logging and urban development, that type of habitat is really quite valuable for industry and has resulted in habitat fragmentation and loss throughout the Pacific Northwest and the range of the spot owl. So this is just a quick little graphic showing. So this is an example of what a nice forest of habitat for spot owls would be. And then you've got your river, you've got lots of prey, lots of little rats and mice. And then you have habitat loss. So this is just getting rid of forests. And then you have fragmentation as a result of that. So there's smaller patches of habitat, which means that the spot owl is not able to cross those empty patches to hunt and to forage and find mates and raise offspring. So why is the spot owl important? Why are we even breeding this endangered species? The main reason would be that they're an umbrella species. So that means that a spotted owl is an indication of a healthy old growth forest ecosystem. And by protecting the spotted owl, you're able to protect a lot of other species as a result of that. So it's the top-down effect. We have species such as the screech owl, martins, salamanders, and different types of plants and lichen that are protected by protecting the forest for the spotted owl. Another threat would be barred owls. So barred owls are very common within the Lower Mainland. I saw a lot of people were from the Lower Mainland, but they're actually not native to the Pacific Northwest. They are originally from the east coast of North America and have made their way across in the last 100 or so years following human development. They are a larger, more aggressive generalist species that outcompete spot owls for habitat and food. This is problematic for not just the spot owls, but because of the competition with other species as well. And the spot owl will actually eat about 1.5 times as much food per bird compared to a spot owl, and they can be found in densities up to 6 times higher than spot owls. So it's just a lot more owls eating a lot more food in the same size of habitat, which is pretty detrimental to the entire ecosystem. And there's also hybridization too. So they can actually mate with spot owls, and that's diluting the genetics and taking away potential mates for spotted owls. So how can we tell them apart? So a lot of people, I'm just gonna open up my chat box here. How many people have seen a spot owl or a barred owl?
You can use your raised hand for that now if you want. There we go. People are using the raised. There's a good place to use a raised hand. Okay, well, that's all right. I've got so far 13 people have put up their hands. Oh, 12, 14?
Yeah, so
these are mine.
So barred owls are very, very common. They do really well in urban environments such as the Lower Mainland. So generally, if you see an owl in your yard or on your deck, or even in a lot of the regional parks in the area, it's likely a barred owl. But how can you tell for sure? So here's a side-by-side comparison of the two species. So we have the spotted owls and the barred owls. The spot owls has a dark brown facial disc with a pretty distinct white X, whereas the X is a little bit more blends in with the overall color on the barred owl. So it's more of an overall white color. The eyes are tough to tell apart because they both have dark brown eyes, but the yellow beak on the barred owl is a pretty prominent feature compared to the more dull on the spotted owl. The best way to tell apart for their plumage would be the dark chocolate brown on the spotted owls with the horizontal white spots. And the barred owl has more of a light gray and brown with vertical bars. So that's where they would get their names from, spots and bars on their chests. And then the last way to tell would be their calls. So we're gonna place a spotted owl call right now. And this is, again, there's less than 10 left in the wild and they need old growth forest. So if you think you're hearing, just listen carefully, and this is a pretty rare call. So just see if you can differentiate between the spotted owl and barred owl. So that's our 4-note call for the spotted owl, and this is a barred owl call, which is a pretty common call. It's often called "Who Cooks for You?" So if you're ever in the forest and you can't actually see the owl, but they're calling, that's a great way to be able to tell them apart. If you hear that longer "Who Cooks for You?" that's the phonetic name that people have given it. It's a barred owl. And then again, the best indication is looking at the habitat that you're in. So the barred owls are found throughout the Lower Mainland. They're also found on Vancouver Island, whereas the spotted owl is not found on Vancouver Island, and it's only found in 100 or so year-old old growth forest, and it needs about 30 square kilometers for a single pair to survive in. So it's you need a huge expansive old growth forest for a spotted owl to live in. So as I mentioned, we are here breeding the spotted owls. Our mission is to restore the population of spotted owls in BC through captive breeding, and then they will hopefully be released into protected habitat. We started in 2006 with just 6 individuals, and now we have 28, and we are part of the nonprofit BCCF. We became part of the nonprofit in 2014, and hopefully we're wanting to have 200 individual spotted owls in protected forests across their range in BC. Here's some photos of what the facility looks like. So I'm here at the facility right now. We have 28 owls, and they're all housed in large aviaries that allows them to fly. There's some private spaces for them to hide from people and other owls and other animals. They have nice dense trees. There's lattice. We try to include as many natural features as possible. Variety of trees, rocks, natural substrate, etc., as well as man-made structures such as roost box and nest shells. We always want to make sure the owls have access to clean water and food. So that's part of our daily job, is making sure that all the owls look okay, they have clean water, and then we feed them at the end of the day. But generally, we do keep the owls as wild as possible by not interacting with them, except for small eyes, who you'll meet later. We have, as I mentioned, we feed rats and mice to the owls here. So we have our rodent building, which is on the facility property. We have rats and mice that are cleaned weekly. We have a very controlled diet for the rodents. So we have healthy rats and mice. We have hopefully healthy owls. We want to make sure that the owl or the rodents also have access to clean water, and then enrichment materials too. So we give them lots of boxes that they can chew on, paper to make nests out of, that kind of thing. So a happy rodent is more nutritious than one that would be stressed out. So talking more about our breeding season, right now we're not in breeding season. It's a bit of a slower season right now, but the breeding season does begin in February, where we start to see different courtship behaviors. So that's such as alloprinting, as indicated in this photo, sitting side by side, just kind of the owls starting to interact a little bit more during the off season. They don't really hang out very often, but they will start to do that in February. And then in March, we have our first eggs that are laid. Second clutch eggs are laid in March, and then the first clutch eggs will hatch in or in April as well. So it's a bit of a busy season in April. A clutch of eggs is like a brood of eggs. So the spot owl will lay 1 to 3 eggs in a clutch, and we're actually able to remove those eggs, and then we can double the amount of eggs she'll produce, mimicking a predation event. So that's called double clutching, and theoretically we can produce twice as many chicks if we're double clutching, because they only lay eggs once a year. So again, April is very busy, and then we go into May, and that's when our first clutch chicks have fledged, and our second clutch chicks are returned to their parents. So we do hand raise them for 10 days before we return the chicks back to their parents, which I'll explain more later. And then June to October, so where we are about right now, chicks are staying with their adults until they're old enough to be separated and live on their own. So we've actually just separated all of our juveniles that were born this year into their own aviaries, and so yeah, they're all adults and grown up already. They grow very, very quickly. So here's some artificial incubation photos. So we take the eggs and artificially incubate them. The reason we do that is for double clutching, as well as we're able to manipulate different parameters to ensure that the eggs are growing and developing and have the best chance at hatching. So temperature, humidity, and rotation are really important. And we do this all in a sterile incubation facility on our property. You can see here the different development throughout the incubation period. So we just use a candle, flashlight, and we candle the eggs, and you can actually see the embryo developing. So you can see in just a few short days how much change happens from a little spider. So you can see in this photo here, that's the embryo there right in the middle. And then there's blood vessels that continue to grow, and the embryos is growing as well throughout the incubation period, which is 32 days. After 32 days, the egg starts to hatch. So you can see maybe slightly in this photo of the egg, there's a little crack in the eggshell. That's called an external pip. And once the chick externally pips, it takes about 80 hours for it to actually hatch. And then when it hatches, it is altricial, which means that its eyes are closed, its ears are closed. It can't really stand up at all or roll around. It just kind of like sits there, doesn't have feathers, it can't thermoregulate. So there's a high level of parental care required, which is why we do 24-hour shifts as soon as those eggs start to hatch. So we're able to monitor and care for the chicks during the time that they're being hand raised. So we'll hand raise them for about 10 days. That includes feeding them multiple times a day, cleaning up after them, doing health checks on them, monitoring their temperature, and it's very, very extensive, in-depth process to do all of this. We have interns during this time to help out. They grow very, very quickly, and this last photo here with when their eyes start to open, that's when we want to return them to the nest to make sure that they don't imprint on us. Their eyes are not really focusing, they're not in imprintation stage at this point, but we don't want them to imprint, so we make sure they go back to their parents sooner rather than later. They'll go back to their parents, and the parents don't have any issues. They are happy to take their chick back regardless of their age. So now we're gonna go into some owl myth busting, which we'll have some poll questions that I hope everyone will participate in. So if Jeff, we're ready to
Sure.
go. Okay.
Which one do you want me? The one about their heads?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Okay, you should see on your screen. There we go. We have a bunch of true or false questions here. Owls can turn their heads 360 degrees. True or false? There we go.
Good. So the majority of you guys got it right. So that is false.
Okay. Okay.
So owls can actually turn their heads only 270 degrees. This is a photo of one of our owls, and she's kind of on an angle. So it looks like her head's turned all the way around, but it's actually not. It's only 270 degrees, and they're able to, which is, again, pretty impressive. It's much more than we can do. Maybe everyone can try to like turn their heads, see how far you can turn them. But we can definitely not do 270 degrees. But their owls are able to do this, and this is with specialized vertebrae. So they have 14 cervical vertebrae, and they have specialized blood vessels that prevent the blood from being cut off. They can't move their eyes in their eye sockets, which is why their heads have to be able to turn. So if you're staring straight. You can look side to side, but an owl can't. So that's why they have to be able to turn their heads all the way, or 270 degrees around. Okay. And then we have another question here. So all owls are nocturnal, true or false?
Okay, there we go.
Okay, good. You guys are doing pretty well here. So 2 for 2. No, owls are not all nocturnal, so that would be false. Owls can actually be nocturnal, crepuscular, or diurnal. So nocturnal is a pretty common word that we hear growing up. It means they're active at nighttime, so they're awake at night. Crepuscular means they're most active at dawn or dusk, and diurnal means they're most active during the day. So there are a variety of different life strategies that owls employ. So as we mentioned at the beginning, there's 200 different species of owls, and then it just helps cover all the different niches if there are nocturnal, crepuscular, and diurnal owls. Generally, we classify the spot owls as nocturnal or crepuscular, depending on who you're talking to, but that means that they're most active during dawn or dusk. So we often hear the owls calling a lot more during sunset and sunrise, but they are not only active then, they're also active during the night, and then occasionally during the day. They do move around, but primarily during the day, we'll just see them roosting in the same spot throughout the day and just kind of sleeping. But they can be awake during the day if they need to be. Okay, another myth here. So if you touch a baby bird, its mother will abandon it.
Here we go.
Okay, good job. So I'll explain a little bit more about why this is not true. The fact is that most owls don't actually have much of a sense of smell, which includes owls. So if you were to touch a baby bird, you're pretty safe. If you can see the nest, you can just take the baby bird and put it right back in the nest, and the parents will take care of it. This is why we're able to return the owls' chicks back to the nest after we hand raise them for 10 days. The exception would be vultures have a good sense of smell, but generally all the birds that you're going to see, the little songbirds, the robins, or the jays that might have fallen out of the nest, or the nest might have fallen down or something like that, you can put the chick back in the nest. And of course, never take a chick home with you. If you're not sure where to put the nest, call your local rehab, wildlife rehab, and they can help you with that. Okay, next one. Owls cannot see during the day. True or false?
Gonna post the results.
Good, very good.
Wow.
Yeah, so almost everyone got this correct. Owls do actually have excellent day and night vision. They are farsighted, which means that they can't see up close super well, but they're able to use the bristles around their beaks to kind of feel around a little bit. We'll talk more about vision when we meet Small Eyes, because she's a visually impaired owl. So if you guys can take a snapshot of what this owl's eyes look like, and then we'll try to compare it to what Small Eyes look like in just a couple minutes. So another myth here is an owl's ears are on top of its head. So as indicated on this photo. Okay, that's very good. So yes, that is a false statement. The owl's ears are actually just slits on the side of their head. So those ear tufts that we saw are actually just a type of feather, and they help with camouflage and expressions as well. And not all owls have prominent ear tufts. So spot owls, for example, you've seen lots of pictures now of spot owls, and they have more of a smooth head. They don't actually have ear tufts. A good example would be great horned owls do have the ear tufts that people are very familiar with. The ear tufts, or the ears themselves, are just on the side of the heads. And if you can actually see here, this is the eye, the back of the eyeball. So you can see their eyes through their ears, which is one of my favorite cool owl facts. And their ears are often asymmetrical, which means that they aren't on the same plane on their head. So one's higher up than the other, and one's larger than the other. And this really helps well with hunting for triangulation. When they're listening for prey, they can pinpoint exactly where it is based on their hearing. So another myth here, owls vomit the food that they don't digest. True or false?
Okay, here we go.
So this is actually the first one we got wrong, guys. So this is actually false. They do digest the food, but they don't vomit. What it is a regurgitation of a pellet. So they do swallow their prey whole, but those prey items often have feathers and bones, which is non-digestible. So they don't actually vomit. It's called a pellet, which is produced every 24 hours, but it's not, it's a different physiological system than actually vomiting. So here's a little video of one of our owls. This is a juvenile, actually. He's producing a pellet. There's not really any sound on this, but there's a bit of background noise. So that was a pretty cute example of regurgitation of a pellet. And again, this is a juvenile, so he looks a little bit confused when he coughs it up because he's not quite used to that yet. It's a natural process, though, that even when they're young chicks in the nest, they'll do that. So yeah, so good job. I hope everyone learned something there. This is a very, very common photo that has been going around Instagram recently. Maybe we can raise our hands if anyone has seen this photo on social media.
I'm also going to launch the poll too, so here.
Yeah, so the myth we have here is owls can sit cross-legged.
There we go.
Good, that is false. They cannot sit cross-legged. So if you want to quickly just take a look at their feet and the position of the owl's toes, and then comparing it to this photo here, the owl is actually sitting back on its hocks. This is a picture of a crane, of course, but you can kind of see the comparison. The bone structure of birds are the same. So this is just showing more of its leg as compared to the owl, because the owl's legs are mostly covered in feathers. So it's actually sitting back on almost like its ankle. So its feet are not crossed. That's not possible for spot owls or for any owls to do, any birds to do. So that's a very common little picture we've seen on the internet a lot. We get a lot of people asking us if this is true, and it is not true. This is, again, the photo we just showed didn't show its legs, and this is why. They're just it's all feathers, but the legs of the owls are actually quite long. This is a photo, not one of our owls, but this is a glove trained owl at another facility. And you can see its legs are quite long. And hopefully this helps people understand that photo a little bit better. So that's the end of our little myth busting. Everyone did very, very well, so I'm quite impressed with you all. And now we can talk maybe a bit more about how we can actually help owls. So one of the good ways we can help is by putting up nest boxes. So this is not applicable to spotted owls because they nest in like 80-foot trees. So that's maybe not the best. And they use cavities, not boxes. So this is not applicable to spotted owls, but it's really good for screech owls and barn owls. So if you have a barn or live in a farm, that's a good option to put up some nest boxes for the barn owls. Finding alternatives to rodenticide, so rodent proofing your house, especially this time of year. I know a lot of people are starting to get rodents into their house, but just thinking of rodenticide free ways to do that. Because if a rodent eats poison and the owls eat that rodent, it can likely kill the owl. So we definitely don't want that, especially in urban environments. That is a very common problem. Another one is keeping pets indoors or on a leash. Again, in the spring with fledglings that are just learning to fly, this is a good way to help keep them safe. Properly disposing of garbage and food scraps. So even if you're driving and you have like an apple core and you just think, oh, I'll just toss it out the window, it's gonna compost on the side of the road. That's actually not a great way to dispose of your garbage and food scrap, because that's increasing the amount of food available to rodents on the side of the road. And so the rodents will start to forage for food on the side of the road. And then that means the owls or hawks or eagles or different types of predators will start to prefer to feed on the side of the road also, which makes it higher likelihood that they can get hit by a car. So keeping that in mind, if you do have food scraps, just disposing it properly, taking it home with you, and that kind of thing, and throwing it in your compost at home. Talking about trees, so leaving trees, even if they're dead, just it's a really good habitat for the spotted owl, or for owls and wildlife. So of course, if it's a dangerous tree, that's a different story. But if it's a nice, safe tree, just leave it standing. I mentioned this briefly a bit before, but not taking owls from the wild or any wildlife. If you do find an abandoned baby, firstly do your research. So look it up, like, is it actually abandoned, or is its mom out foraging? This is, again, applicable to all wildlife, rabbits, deer, birds, etc. And then it's always nice to have a local wildlife rehab in your Rolodex to see where you can take these animals, or if you had questions about wildlife, they should be able to help you. Locally, we have here in the Lower Mainland, we have Critter Care, which handles the mammals, and Wildlife Rescue in Burnaby will help you with birds. And then, of course, we have Owl in Delta. So those are 3 really good resources if you do find wildlife that you're not really sure what to do with. And then lastly, this is really, really applicable right now, given Halloween is on Saturday this year. Taking down objects that owls can get tangled in. So if you're putting up fake spider webs, or if you have like balloons or anything like that, just being aware that the animals might not be able to see it and they can get entangled in it. So a good idea is usually just, if you're going to have fake spider webs, don't put them across your lawn, just put them on your house. And then of course, checking in the morning that nothing got tangled up in there. And then if something did get entangled, you might want to call one of those rehab centers that I mentioned. So now maybe we can do some quick questions before we do our special guest, if that's okay, Jeff?
Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna join you in the video here just so that you're not there by your lonesome. We do so one of the first questions. Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. So one of the first, somebody typed in the chat box. They asked about, are there any good resources for building bat boxes or nest boxes? I should say not bat boxes, nest boxes.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, the screech owls and the barn owls would be most of the local species benefit from nest boxes. If you just do Google, there'll be lots of different designs. I think Sophie, I don't know if Sophie from the barn owls is doing anything with you guys. Are you doing a barn owl?
No, she's worked with us, but we don't necessarily, I guess the question was about particular resources. If you had, if you could recommend any good resources.
Yeah, I would just Google it. Yeah, look it up online, and then there'll be lots of different designs that you can look at. So.
Okay, so there are some questions already appearing in the Q&A box. So folks, just feel free to type in the Q&A box, and we'll try and answer them in order before we bring out a special guest. So the first question would be, do you feed them or allow them to hunt?
The spot owls here are fed euthanized prey. They do have live hunting opportunities that we give occasionally, but we want to make sure that they're getting the food and not introducing rats and mice into the forest back here. So we do primarily euthanize them because these are resident owls. They're not going to be released. Our breeding ones aren't being released.
Okay, and do they mate for life, and how many in the wild? Oh no, you already had indicated how many. Oh wait, so there's 2 parts, sorry. Do they mate for life, and how many in the wild are pairs?
So yes, they do mate for life. If you do separate a pair, one individual in that pair doesn't survive, they can reform bonds, but primarily, yes, they are monogamous and for life. And right now, there's only one in BC, one pair that we're aware of in the wild.
Okay, great. Well, I think I know the answer to this one, but I'll get you an answer anyway. Do you have some baby owls right now?
No babies right now, unfortunately. It's only during the springtime that we have little young chicks. They grow up very quickly. So all of the chicks that were born in April and May this year are now adults. So definitely, if you're interested in more baby pictures, follow us on our social media. We do a live webcam every spring, which we did host a webinar with Parklands then in the May. We did a live nest stream. So definitely follow us online on social media if you're interested more in baby owls.
Absolutely. How many babies can an owl have?
That depends. Each year they'll lay 1 to 3 eggs. Not all of those are going to necessarily be fertile, and not all of those are necessarily going to hatch. But they can have 1 to 3 eggs per clutch, and then they can double clutch, as I mentioned. So that's theoretically they can have up to 6 eggs. So if all things go really, really, really perfectly well, 6 babies per year, but that's a very unrealistic number.
So here's the next question is, have you thought about doing a barred owl cull in Chilliwack River Valley to help out the spotted owls?
So any barred owl removals and culls are, that's not our responsibility. That's not what we do. We are breeding spotted owls and we're taking care of the spotted owls. That would be a Ministry of Forests question to ask about. So yeah, that would be, talk to them about it.
And how many owls are released into the wild?
We haven't done any releases yet. Hopefully soon we'll start doing releases. We wanted to make sure we had a good breeding population first before we did any releases.
So I think this kind of, well, this is, I think, a different question is like, do you keep them? But I think that's, is your intention, I'm going to reframe this question, hope I get it right. Do you intend to keep any of them rather than releasing them into the wild?
Yeah, so we will keep some of them. We'll call them our resident breeding population because we do need to keep them in captivity to breed, to release their offspring.
Okay, I don't know if you can answer this question here. What's the best way to photograph the owls? Any ideas? Any suggestions?
Firstly, I would not suggest ever going out and disturbing a spotted owl in the wild. That's, not something I would recommend. They are quite rare, so we don't want them to be disturbed. Here at the breeding facility, we take photos kind of like on an opportunistic basis. But if you're specifically looking to photograph spotted owls, I don't really have any advice for you.
Okay, thanks. Here's so 2 questions and then we'll get to our special guest. Do they only naturally use old growth forests?
Yeah, that's related to the prey density, and they're specialized on the old growth forest. Of course, here in Langley, where the breeding facility is, it's not old growth forest, but we're able to provide nesting sites and food to them. So they can survive here, but if they were released into the wild in these types of forests, they would not survive.
So I just have to share here that someone in the chat box said, how do you photograph them? They went, with a camera. Okay, Jack. Okay, thanks, Jack. That's helpful. But Jack just did that to all panelists, so not everybody can see that in the chat box. Anyway, I'm going to just answer this and get you to answer this one other question. Then we can bring Small Eyes out, and then we can continue with the Q&A box here. So with the Q&A. So how do you tell the difference between males and females? That's a good question.
That's a good question. It's not easy. Typically, the best way to tell would be their size. So you can look at them and like the male is slightly smaller, but if you can hear them calling, their calls are quite distinctly different. The pitch is different. The females are high pitched and the males are lower pitched. And then specifically for us, we band all of the owls. So if we're able to see their band, we know that we band the ladies on the left. So they have their left leg will have a colored band and the males are on the right. But it is quite difficult to tell because they don't, their plumage looks the same. Their size is, if you're in the field, the size and the audio is the best way to tell.
Okay, so why don't we bring out Small Eyes now? I'm going to turn off my video here so that people get a better view and they don't have to look at me because they don't have to look at me anyway. There we go. Okay. Yeah.
So we're gonna move the camera, and Hannah, one of my techs, is holding Small Eyes. So so this is Small Eyes. She
let's see if we can get her pretty close. Yeah, we just. Oh. She doesn't like to be inside. So come back.
So you can see Small Eyes' legs there. So Small Eyes is attached to the glove. So she's a glove-trained spotted owl. So she's the only glove-trained northern spotted owl in Canada. The reason that she's a glove-trained bird and not part of our breeding population is because she has, as I mentioned, a visual impairment. If she looks at the camera, maybe you can see. Actually, this camera's mobile. So, do you guys see her face?
Oh.
So, Small Eyes is named Small Eyes because she has a condition called micro-ophthalmia, which means literally small eyes. She was born here in 2009, and it was quickly determined that she did have this condition. She also has cataracts, so if she's blinking, you can see she has cataracts, and that just means that there was something happened when she was developing, possibly or genetically, and she's not able to really be a proper owl, unfortunately, so she's not able to hunt at all. We did try to have her bond with a male, but because she can't really see, she can see like shapes and like color or shapes and light, we think, but she can't see if something's coming at her really fast. She can't determine what that is, and so she gets spooked really easily when the male was trying to mate with her. So that's why she became part of the community outreach program just a couple of years ago. So she's a great ambassador for her species, and she's gives people an opportunity to see a spot owl up close. We actually were just at Campbell Valley on the 17th. We did an event there called Awesome Owls, which was great. So we do try to take her out into the community as best we can. She's great because she actually doesn't really, she can't see anything, so she's not super concerned about a lot of things. But yeah, she's a great ambassador for her species, and we're happy to have her. And she also has her own Instagram. It's at Small Eyes the Owl. So if you're interested in more photos of her, that's a great place to find them.
So I have a question before I get to the others. So how long would she be from like head to tail? Because I think she's actually a little bigger than I expected. I for some reason I thought that the northern spotted owls were smaller.
She's crouched down, kind of like, the thing about owls is they're mostly feathers. So maybe if Hannah can maybe even turn her around, you can see her from behind. She is quite big.
Yeah.
She's not small. If you guys have seen barred owls in the wild, she's slightly smaller than a barred owl. So she's, yeah, about, I would say 40 centimeters, 50 centimeters maybe. But she weighs about 650 grams or so. So she's not really heavy at all. It's just mostly feathers.
Wow. Okay, let's start getting back to some of the questions. And she's gorgeous. She's really beautiful.
Yeah, so you can probably see the colors on her here. It's quite different from a barred owl.
And I know that she was a big hit at the Awesome Owls event. I did hear about that. So a couple of questions. Let's see. So I'm gonna ask this one because this is about, yeah, how old is Small Eyes? Oh, 2009, so she's about 11 then?
Yes.
Okay, so you answered that one already. Here's a question. When you plan to release owls, how will you teach them to hunt before release?
We'll do live prey for them. So we haven't determined. That'll be talking with the ministry that we work with to determine that type of that strategy for that. But we will be doing live prey for them.
Okay, and I think you did say this at the beginning when you said how many spotted owls are left. I think you did say 100. Is that what you said in the wild?
No, less than 10.
Less than 10, sorry, less than 10, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I'm getting my numbers mixed up. Okay, there you go.
I wish it was 100.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, we answered that question there. Okay, yeah, so yeah, Small Eyes would have been born in the spring because that's when they're all born.
Right.
Let's see. I'm just looking also in the chat box here. There was somebody that had a question here. Or a comment. Oh yeah. Are you aware of an update on what is being done about the Spuzin Valley logging project where the spotted owl nest is?
Actually, that article was a bit misleading. So the spotted owl nest is actually, that area is not being logged. The logging that is happening is actually quite far away from that nest. So the owls are in something called the wildlife habitat area. So that's about 3,600 hectares, which is sufficient habitat for them, and the logging is not taking place in that habitat. So that pair of owls is safe. Their nesting area is safe. And yeah, so that the logging is happening far away from their nest and their habitat.
Okay. Are there any other, so you did indicate, I'm just looking at some of the questions here, that barred owls are generally a little bit bigger than the spotted owls. Okay, so we kind of answered that one already. So are there any other places that are breeding spotted owls?
No, they're not. So we're the only place in the entire world breeding this species, which is exciting, but also challenging. We've definitely had our challenges. We started in 2007 and have had to learn a lot, and we have learned a lot especially the last 5 or so years. Okay, and Sophie wants to know, how do you know how many are left in the wild? It's really difficult. That's definitely an estimate.
Yeah.
It depends. We don't actually go out and do the surveying ourselves, so we're not the ones going out to find the owls. That's the provincial government's doing that. But what they do is they do something called surveying. They go out and call for the owls, and it really depends on if they're surveying the proper areas. There might be some owls might not like to call if there's like a great horned owl around or a barred owl around. Some sites are just difficult to logistically get to, so that it's very difficult to get a firm estimate on the number. We know there's at least 3 that have been confirmed and like visually like sighted, but that again it's very dependent on surveying effort and calling suppression.
And you did indicate this at the beginning, but maybe you can answer it again because I know some people were just joining. How many owls do you currently have at the facility?
There are 28 individual spotted owls here.
Okay, because I know you had already answered that one. How long would it be until you release spotted owls back into the wild?
We have a surplus of male owls right now, so we could be doing it very, very soon.
Okay, but you haven't yet, as you indicated.
Right, yeah, and so that will be, we're going to look to the provincial government. They'll be handling the primary decisions for that.
Oh, here's an interesting question. Where did your breeding adults come from? From BC or Washington and Oregon?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have the founding population of 6 individuals. Majority of them have passed away since then. They were old or like adult individuals when they came in. We do have 3 American birds here from Oregon, so that's great. It really helps with the genetics. And then the other individual breeding birds are primarily from the offspring that we've bred here. But there are a couple wild ones that were brought in from the wild in BC.
Okay, and how many owls are actually mated at your breeding program?
In this past breeding season, we had 7 breeding pairs.
Okay. And how do they digest their food? Jessica wants to know.
They have stomachs and digestive tract. So yeah, they do digest their food. But that pellet that they cough up is just like the stuff like you can't actually digest. Okay, are there any more? We're getting close to noon. Oh, here it goes. Oh, how high can they fly? They're not soaring birds. They do live again in the old growth forest, so they don't fly above the canopy in the old growth. So you won't see them flying high up in the sky like you would with like a vulture or an eagle. Okay, and let's see. How old is an owl when it gives birth? So I guess it's like, you know, when are they old enough to, Yeah, so they can lay eggs as early as a year old, and our youngest to have produced offspring was 2 years old, but that was, it can vary very much from 2 years to up to like 7. Okay, there's still lots of questions coming in. They slowed down for a while. Let's see. How many rodents would you be giving each owl, I guess, in a day? Yeah, so small eyes here would be eating 1 juvenile rat, so 1 like 3-week-old rat, or 2 mice per day. Okay. Okay, I don't know if we can answer this question, Angela. About how many feathers does one spotted owl have? That's a great question. A lot. We every year they molt, so they actually lose all their feathers, or a lot of their feathers, and we have to clean them all up. And I can tell you there's a lot, like thousands probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, good question.
I'm not sure what this means. I don't know if there's a typo, but it says, do they have crops with small rocks inside? Not sure.
No. So a crop is the owls don't have a crop. They have two stomachs technically, but crops with rocks are more, and like gizzards and stuff is more for other birds do have that, but not owls. They don't eat rocks.
I've never heard that expression. I just learned something.
Yeah.
Crops, interesting. I'm looking in the chat box, and here I'm just looking, and somebody's asking, do you require volunteers?
We are always looking for volunteers. I'm just going to share my screen with our contact info here.
Yeah.
So if you are interested in volunteering or helping out, donations, we do adopt an owls, so you get updates about the owls. Our contact information is there. So we have a lot of different volunteer opportunities. So definitely send us a message on Facebook, Instagram, on our website. We're also doing a bottle drive, which is kind of a fun fundraiser for us because we can't do a lot of community fundraising right now. So if you go to our website, there's information about the bottle drive. So we have a Return It Express account. And all you have to do is collect bottles, no sorting required, and you just have to drop it off at Return It, and then it automatically, the donations come to help feed the owls and pay for their care.
So this is probably a good time. Sorry I didn't get to all the questions. This is probably a good time to wrap up because it's just noon now, and I know people probably have to get back to school or whatever, go for lunch. So maybe Janet, you can put up, there we go. So that has all three. If you want to, so first of all, thank you so much, Jasmine. And was it Hannah? Is that your name?
Yes.
So thank you to the two of you. This was awesome. This is fantastic. We had a really large turnout of people, and it's always, Jasmine, I always enjoy your presentations, so they're great. So thanks again for coming in. And again, thanks to Pacific Parklands Foundation for hosting this webinar. So again, if you want more information about Pacific Parklands Foundation, Metro Vancouver, or the Northern Spotted Owl Breeding Program, there are their websites there. There's the addresses. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. This is actually the last webinar in our fall webinar series, Nature Connections webinar series, but we're planning more webinars for next year. And like, just keep if you follow Pacific Parklands Foundation on Facebook, or else email them and get on their newsletter list. We'll keep you abreast of all the things that we have planned for next year. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Hannah. Everybody have a great day.